Welcome back to LinkedIn Live at the Milken Institute Global Conference. For our final segment of the afternoon, I'm joined by Kathryn Sayko, the Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer at PGIM, a major asset manager managing more than $1.2 trillion. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here.
So let's really dive deep into diversity and inclusion, especially in finance. We hear more about quotas versus aspirational targets, for example. Where do you see more of the attention right now, and do you anticipate a shift in that balance at all?
Yeah, so great question. And a lot of folks talk about this concept of quotas. I think the jury's out in terms of quotas driving the right behaviors and, in fact, the right outcomes. And so we instead think about it more in terms of aspirational targets. And even to take a step back from there, we really think about laying the groundwork with the environment to make sure it's an inclusive environment that top talent is attracted to. And if you have top talent interested in working in your environment, by default, they're diverse. Right. And so the culture, in fact, will drive diverse talent to you. And diverse talent and top talent then drives really great outcomes for our clients. And so we think of it more of a virtuous circle around relating culture, talent, and outcomes, as opposed to imposing a specific quota. That being said, there have been programs, governmental programs and others, that have been successful at increasing, as an example, membership of women on boards.
Right, here in California.
Here in California, yeah. I think a number of the Scandinavian countries were leaders in applying those quotas to their board levels, on their boards of directors. What is yet to be discovered is, by virtue of those women joining the boards, has there been any knock-on effect within the companies that those boards govern? And so when I talk about relating quotas to outcomes, that's really what I'm talking about, because I think it's important that we all have aspirations to bring in diverse ideas to our organization. But I think alone, that's not a sustainable thing. And so that's why it's so critical that you think about getting the culture right and your environment so that your talent's attracted and thrives. And then you end up with really great outcomes for your clients.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on culture in a minute, but you mentioned aspirational targets. Are you able to share at PGIM, for example, where you have 4,000 employees, what some of those targets are, or at least perhaps how far you are from your targets right now?
Yeah, so we think about this a whole lot, and I am glad to be able to report that we've done pretty well with respect to our advances around women in senior levels, and are quite focused on bringing more people of color in as well. And gender and ethnicity don't necessarily constitute all the factors of diversity, but those are two that are largely measurable in the states. And so PGIM is very focused on our senior level executives, so our VP population above. And in fact, we have identified aspirational growth with respect to the women and people of color within that population. Say 5 years ago, we were kind of in the mid 30% range. Now we're 5+ points beyond that, and aspirationally we're looking to add another 5 over 5. And so, as I said, these aren't quotas, but it's been a terrific exercise with our CEOs and senior executives across the firm to think about what levers we can press within each organization, because each organization is different. Its culture is different. Its maturity as an organization is different. And so there are opportunities within each organization to identify levers to ensure that top talent is rising.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those levers, and especially those levers that establish a culture that's welcoming and inclusive and supportive of people of all backgrounds to come to the financial to come to an asset manager in the first place, and to stay there throughout all phases of their life. What are some of those levers that help create that culture?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I would say at a quite senior level, we've established a partnership program between men and women who are MDs across the firm. Different businesses didn't know one another, but they have year-long partnerships where they help one another understand what their respective career paths were and appreciate a bit what it's been to be a man that succeeded in asset management as well as a woman that succeeded in asset management. And it's been a really effective way to engage our men who run a lot of our businesses in trying to solve for what is really a business issue as much as it is a social issue. So that's one example. I would say on the other extreme, from a cultural perspective, we have we're very attuned to other factors of diversity, other talent pools, which we think we're perhaps under-levering. And whether it's our veteran population, whether it's our LGBT population, whether it's those with various disabilities, these are dimension to our employee base that we want to make sure we're creating an environment where our veterans, for example, feel proud to not only admit but to talk about their experience as enlisted veterans and how those experiences contribute to the team effectiveness. So lots of populations to focus on, but at the end of the day, we want to be the place where top talent sees a path for success and where they can thrive both at work and with their personal lives.
Kathy, there's a great question coming in from our audience regarding whether you would expand that population to even include those with non-traditional education, non-traditional degrees, or not a four-year degree. Is that increasingly the case at PGIM and in the industry?
It's interesting because, as a 25-year veteran of financial services, the traditional way of assessing a candidate's fit with an organization was, have they done this in the past? And I think we all know with the evolution of the workplace and with the war for top talent that we're going to have to reimagine how we think about sourcing that talent. And in fact, maybe the best person for the job, in fact, has done nothing related to that job previously, but is the best equipped to do that job now. And so I think that we are reimagining what the traditional stereotypes have been. Absolutely see a path for non-traditional education routes. At the end of the day, we want to level the playing field so that everyone has an opportunity to potentially become our next CEO.
That's great. A common response you hear from corporate leaders, especially in finance, regarding this issue is that there's a pipeline problem, that there aren't enough women, let's say, for example, even interested in this career path. And I did an interview recently with Seema Hingarani, who runs Girls Who Invest, who's really working on this problem and finds so many women interested, but these young women just don't see a cultural fit for them down the line, and that's why they might lose interest. So is there a pipeline problem, and what work can be done on that common response we hear from leaders? Yeah,
and we have a pretty tight relationship with Girls Who Invest for those reasons. I do think there is legitimacy to the assertion that without visible evidence of women in senior roles in asset management, it makes it a bit harder sale to top talent, particularly female talent, to consider it as a career path. And so I think the onus is on us, and that candidly is a part of our the reason behind being so focused on increasing the women and people of color in our senior ranks, because we want proof points to our talent today as well as our future talent that they have a shot at leadership across our organization. Yeah. And another question from our stream: across 4,000 employees, how do you ensure that these initiatives are reaching everyone? We had David Hunt, your CEO, on
earlier today, is he personally involved in this issue, and does he, set aside time himself to make it clear that this is a priority to him?
Yeah, so worth noting, I report directly to David, and so from the very beginnings of his leadership in PGIM, he set up a Chief Inclusion and Diversity Office as a direct report to him. I work hand in hand with our Chief HR Officer, but also 8 of my colleagues run our 8 businesses. And we view one another as partners in executing on the talent strategies within each business. But at the end of the day, the CEOs are responsible for their talent strategy. I'm an enabler. And if you could see the conviction in the conversations we have when we have our quarterly business reviews, they are often dominated by conversations around succession planning and how we're approaching the market and the talent pipeline.
Yeah.
So I would say that I benefit from the fact that our CEOs and their CEO, who's my boss, is deeply engaged and committed to this. For all the right reasons, social as well as really the business imperative and the external forces that are driving this conversation.
Yeah, this is a conference discussing global themes. Your firm is a global firm.
Yes.
Are there global nuances to diversity and inclusion, and how do you manage those different nuances?
So very interesting, and as part of my education in taking on this role was I didn't really understand the subtlety and nuance beyond the process of hiring and kind of the counting of diversity. But as you point out, we are a global firm, and a culture in our offices in Tokyo is quite different than the culture in our offices in Singapore, which is quite different from the culture and the talent approach in Italy. And so it's important that we have overarching aspirations in terms of broadening diversity, but you have to treat each business and each city in a custom fashion.